Hi, guys. I'm Missy Reed, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, My Broken Hallelujah. On this podcast, we go into detail about my abuse in my childhood, my abortion story, and whatever else I feel like the Lord is prompting me to talk about. On this episode, I'm going to go into detail about the very first memory that I had of abuse. It's not in chronological order. This is just the first memory I had. It was not the first thing that ever happened to me, but this is just how my brain processed all the abuse. And this was what I got first. Just to kind of give you a little backstory, the first time anything ever popped up and tried to come to the surface was in 1998. And I started seeing a counselor that at that time, I'd only seen her for a short time. I only dealt with kind of more of the surface stuff because the shame was so deep, I couldn't go any deeper. And then again in 1999, when an F5 tornado came through my town and destroyed my home, and my children and I were in the house when it hit. And that traumatic event triggered PTSD that I didn't even know was a thing at that time. And I actually didn't go see a counselor then. Well, that's not true. I did go see a counselor a couple of times, but he was not a Christian counselor, and I was not interested at all in learning what the world had to say. I wanted to be counseled from a Christian point of view, and that wasn't going to happen with him. So what I ended up doing is I ended up going to a ministry that held weekly meetings, prayer meetings, groups, teachings. They had weekend retreats, and I got a lot of healing from that. They were called heart menders, which I don't even think that they're still in Oklahoma, but they had written a book about healing the wounded child heart. And I did get quite a bit of healing and deliverance there. Again, I didn't deal with any kind of memory. So when the first time I started dealing with any kind of memories was in 2004, and I had, I guess, what you could call a mini nervous breakdown. I don't really even know what to call it. I still worked. I still had to function in that degree. I had, kids at home, a husband, all of that. But the extent of what I could do was going to work, coming home, and crying for hours. I literally couldn't function, and my husband had to step in and be both mom and dad. And I went to a counselor then for about 8 months. And I learned a lot as far as emotional wise memories. I got a few, but they were kind of jumbled and didn't really make sense. And I tried to put them together myself, and it ended up just causing kind of confusion. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to put them together. I thought that's just what you did. And I didn't find out until later in 2009 that that's really not how that works. That's not, you don't piece together memories. They need to be able to flow and make sense to you at the time, when you have them. So in 2009, the Lord, basically said, I'm going to need you to remember your childhood. You're going to need to find a counselor. So I found a Christian counselor in Oklahoma where I live. And that was the first time I had ever heard of EMDR. And it was life-changing. For me, I've said it in past podcasts, that's just a therapy that worked for me, that allowed me, again, to be able to watch the memories as on a movie screen. And at that time, they made sense because they all went together. It wasn't me trying to piece this together, that together, and try to make it fit what I thought it should fit. So with that being said, I didn't get all my memories at one time. They were broken down in several different sessions, but they all related to one another, and they all just made absolute sense. So the first time I was ever abused was when I was 8 years old. I had just moved in with my biological father and his girlfriend. And I was so excited to be able to go live with my dad. I thought I was going to have my dad to myself. I didn't realize that he was going to take a girlfriend and live with us. But I was just excited to live with him. I am my father's only child, and I've known my whole entire life that I was literally the apple of his eye. He never wanted any more children. He was, for the most part, fine with girlfriends that he got throughout the years that had children. He was never mean to them or anything like that. That I know of. I wasn't really around him much after I lived with him. It kind of, and I'll go into more reason why in other podcasts. There is a reason why he kind of just disappeared, other than just being who he was. So when I moved in with them, it was the end of second grade. And the woman that he lived with was cruel, and she hated me. And she was also a practicing witch. So in my life before then, I had no exposure that I know of to any kind of occult or Wiccan, anything like that. Not that I had a perfect life and that I wasn't exposed to other things, but I'd never been exposed to that level of evil ever. And the abuse started with her hitting me, saying mean, cruel things to me when my dad wasn't around, which was quite often. You know, he was very big into partying, coming home and being a full-time husband and dad wasn't really on his agenda. I kind of feel like he probably got a girlfriend so that he wouldn't have to really do it. I don't know. I never really asked him. He's passed away now, but the first memory I had was her hitting me, calling me stupid, telling me I was ugly, telling me that she hated me, telling me that I wasn't worth it, that my dad didn't come home because he didn't want to be with me, how she was sick and tired of taking care of his kid. She's stuck at home. Mind you, she had a child that was there too, but that never even dawned on me when I was 8 years old and being told that I was absolutely worthless. And she would hit me, like I said, and I never told. She would always threaten me, don't you tell. So I never did. I never told my dad that she was beating me, calling me names. She would look at me with absolute hate in her eyes. And the second memory I got was her name. I couldn't remember her name. So while I was processing the first memory, I could only say the woman that my dad lived with. I couldn't remember her name. And it probably took a couple of weeks after I got that memory to be able to remember her name. And when I remembered her name, it made everything 100% real to me. It kind of opened the gate to everything, because then I knew who she was. I knew what she looked like. I knew what her daughter's name was, what her daughter looked like, and it was real. And I was in the shower when the name just came to me. I wasn't even really thinking about it. And it just, as memories do, when you start opening the door to them, they come. And I remember I had to sit down in the shower and just cry. That's probably the longest shower I've ever taken in my life. And how I didn't run out of hot water, I'll never know. Maybe a miracle, because I just couldn't get out. I couldn't get out of the shower because now it was real. And I knew it was real before, but now it was without a shadow of a doubt. I knew that the memories were never going to stop coming until they were completely done. And the part of me that I had avoided my whole life was now staring me in the face. And there wasn't going to be any other way around it. I wasn't going to be able to push it down like I had done for years. I was going to have to deal with the very dark space that I was terrified of entering. I remember I asked my counselor, how deep does this well go? What if I go in and it's so deep I never come back out? What if I come back out different? What if I am a monster like they are? There was so many what ifs, and she was very good at reassuring me that doing this with the Lord and in a Christian environment, biblical teaching, that while it may get dark and deep, I will always make it back. Jesus will never, ever leave me there. Not ever. And he would walk through it with me the whole time. And then the next memory that I had was when she allowed her brother and his friend to sexually abuse me. And they actually came in from a different city in Oklahoma that was a couple of hours away. Now, I don't know if they drove in to specifically molest me or they were in town for another reason and this was just the bonus. But I remember being in my room playing. I guess my dad was at work or he wasn't home. I don't really know. Obviously, he wasn't home, but I don't know where he was, and her daughter wasn't there. And I was in my bedroom playing Barbies. I just wanted to stay as far away from her as I could at all times. And I remember her saying, yes, she's ready. She won't tell. And the friend said he was going to come in first. He was going to go first. And he came in and took my pants off and began to use his fingers to penetrate me. And I was in such shock. I didn't see it coming. You know, there's always a time before when I knew something bad was going to happen. Because you could see it and feel it. Even as a child, you know something is way off here. And this, I didn't. I never felt safe in that house. I never felt comfortable in that house. But I didn't expect this to happen with her. I just thought, she is someone that would hit me and call me names and tell me how stupid I was. And when he began to molest me, I could only stand frozen. And I could just look forward and not even blink. I literally just became stone. And I guess it freaked him out so bad and made him so angry that he slapped me. And he slapped me hard because they were laughing at him that this is what happened when he went in. I guess maybe I was the first one he ever decided to molest. I don't know. And in that memory, not only did I have to relive the feeling, the pain of his fingers going inside me, but also the pain of the slap. And that was so surprising to me. I didn't realize I was going to have to remember the pain as well and what things did to my body. And then the brother came in. I think he made some comment about watch and learn, or look, this is how it's done, or something to that effect. And he came in and he was kind and nice. And in a weird way, I felt safe, even though I wasn't. He was absolutely touching me and having me touch him and doing all of these things. He made me feel special and not like his friend did. And I couldn't understand how I would form a bond with someone who was sexually abusing me. And I know now that that is a groomer technique. They know how to do it very well. And as a child, you will never understand how or why or when. And when they were done, he went back in the kitchen, or the dining room, and she came in and said, "Get dressed. Your dad will be home soon. Don't you dare tell him." So I did what I was told to do. And they were laughing. And the laughing is what triggered anger in me. I was so angry. The rage from that went all through me. And I want to say here that there is a such thing as righteous anger, and this is righteous anger. This isn't something that you're going to be condemned for. God completely understands, and you have every right to be angry that this happened to you. It's how you handle your anger and what are you working towards. My end goal was, of course, to be free. And that would later involve forgiving them. That didn't happen right at first, and nor did he ask me to do that right at first. We had to go through memories first, and then the ask to forgive them came later. But in this anger, I couldn't get any more memories. I could only get the emotions, which again is not a bad thing. This is right around the time the counselor said, "Are you angry with God?" And I thought, you don't say you're angry with God. No, I'm not angry with God. I didn't want to be struck down or something. I'd never been taught that it was okay to be truly angry at God. And she said, Missy, God understands if you're angry with him. He's not afraid of the hard questions. He will answer the question of why. He's not afraid of that. He's not afraid of your anger. You don't have to hold back from him. And in fact, part of the healing process, for me anyway, it was being able to go to God and ask the hard questions. And so she said, I would encourage you to do that. And I just thought, no way. I am not going to question God. That does not, no. So when I did finally go to God, I remember I was sitting in the car, and all of a sudden when I started asking, why did this happen to me? And I was crying, and I said, where were you? How could you let this happen to me? You are God. You made the world, the universe. You are God. And I was crying, and I was so angry. And I'd already kind of been told or talked about, I'm not sure which one, about we live in a fallen world. And I kind of already had an understanding of that, but at the same time, it was so personal. I felt like he just let me go through this as a child. And how could you do that? How could you not care enough about me? How could you not care enough about me to stop this from happening or let someone see what else was happening and get me before this happened? Because this wasn't the first time that someone had touched me. And it wouldn't be the last time someone touched me. And I remember I was just crying because my heart was so broken. And in a flash of a second, I seen Jesus sitting next to me in that car, crying for me harder than I was crying for myself. I don't mean he was physically there. It was in the spirit. It was a vision. And I could feel his broken heart for me. And it was greater than my own broken heart for me. I'm going to try to get through this without crying because it was so beautiful. And I realized that what happened to me was never his will for my life. That he hated it more than I hated it. That he cries over me or cried over me more than I cried for myself because there was such a brokenness there. And I began to realize that he was there with me during all of this, that he protected my mind through all of what was happening to my body. Because every time someone touched my body the way that these people did, I was able to go away. Some people say you go inside yourself. For me, I was in a garden. And it was the most beautiful place I had ever been. I can still remember it to this day. I can remember the tall grass with flowers that I would run my hand through, the pond that was there. There was beautiful green trees, the swing. I don't have any scriptures to back this up, but I swear it was a part of heaven. I don't know. I know that I've heard other people talk about where they went when abuse happened to them, and it's kind of exactly where I went. There's a little bit of difference, but I really feel like I just got to go to heaven while all these horrible things were happening to my body. And it wasn't just one time. It was almost every single time. And I began to realize what it meant in the whole big picture, where God did protect my mind. Everyone has a free will. And yes, we live in a fallen world. We live in a sinful world. And in God's sovereignty, he gave us all our own free will. And I remember I was trying to figure out a way how to articulate what I learned from having that encounter with Jesus. And I seen Alex Seeley talking about, I don't even know where it started. I just seen a snippet of her saying that the Lord told her, if someone uses their free will to hurt you, he will come and heal that and make that right. And I thought, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. And it is written in the word that says what was meant for your harm, God would turn it and use it for good. And I believe that 100% because of that encounter. So I want to encourage you today, if you're struggling with, it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years and I'm still not set free. I wasn't completely set free from everything until 2019. That's 20 years. And sometimes that's just how long it takes to be able to go back and do everything. And I can hear people saying now, well, that's not me. I remember everything that was done to me. Every time someone touched me, every time something happened to me, I remember all of it. Well, sometimes just because you can remember it doesn't make it any easier to get over. Sometimes you need to go and deal with each single time it happened to you, because there's not just the knowing of what happened. There are emotions that come with that. There is a level of trauma that you need to deal with. There are also doors that you need to close, because every time I had a memory, I was able to close the door to this room. So for me, they kind of worked like rooms. So whenever I would have the memory and I would have the emotions, I was able to invite Jesus to come in and heal that little girl and that scenario of that memory. Now, there may be more to this situation, but in this session, this was all that I could handle. So while that little girl still had more to go through and I still had more to process, that one memory was healed. That part of the puzzle was done. So if it's taking you 20 years to be able to deal with it, that's okay. I want to encourage you to find a licensed counselor, to get in there, do the hard work, do whatever treatment, where if it's EMDR or a different kind of treatment, I want to encourage you to do that so that it allows you to process. For me, I chose a Christian counselor. Again, I'm not interested in how the world wants to counsel me. I want to know what the Word of God says about healing and restoration. I am going to link in the description a website that actually you can plug in your zip code and it will give you a list of Christian counselors in your area. That is how I found one of my Christian counselors, and I'll go into that later, in Dallas. And the Christian counselor that I have here in Oklahoma, she is also on that list. I don't want to give their names because I don't have their permission to do so, but I was able to find them on that list. It is a little squirrely. Sometimes I can't get the zip code to work, but I think that you can probably contact them and they can probably forward you one. Don't hold me to that. I've actually never had to contact them, but I would think that that would be a possibility. Anyway, this is where I'm going to end for today. I do want to say a little prayer for you today. If you are someone who is struggling with trying to get over abuse that happened in your childhood, or trying to even understand why it happened and where was God in all of this, I hope this podcast has helped you somewhat, maybe just a little. But also I want to let you know that Jesus is always right there. In His Word, He promises to never leave us or forsake us. And sometimes the walk is very, very hard to complete freedom and healing. You're not alone. There are a lot of us out here that have walked that path. If you ever need to contact me, I'll also link how you can contact me. And I would love to pray for you, to help you any way I can along the way. Lord, I just pray over anyone listening to this podcast, Lord, that may be struggling, that you would give them peace, the peace that transcends all understanding, the peace that guards their heart and their mind through this walk, Lord, and that you would lead them to the people that they need in their life, that you would bring alongside them people that have walked this out, godly counselors that can help them and show them how to be set free from this once and for all. Lord, wrap them in your love. Let them know again that you're right there, and all they need to do is trust you and take your hand. I just pray peace and comfort over them right now, that today will be a day full of joy even. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.